There's been so much transformation for me in starting to focus more on who I'm becoming versus what I don't want to become. And this has to be said in the beginning of your journey, it's so much easier to come from a place of what you don't want because sometimes you just don't know where you're meant to go and you don't know exactly what you do want. But for me, I knew what I didn't want. I did not want to be a pawn in the system. I did not want someone to have control over my time and my energy and when I'm supposed to do something or be somewhere. So, that being said, you will get to a stage in your personal evolution where you start to notice that it's actually a bit detrimental to be focusing on where you're moving away from. The pain, the anger, the sadness, the fear, which has been driving you, it's totally okay to tap into those emotions at a certain season in your life. But you will get to another season or phase where you begin to be filled with so much positivity and health and abundance that you start to realize it makes more sense to be pulled through those emotional frequencies and states rather than to be driven through what used to drive you. So it's tricky here. It just depends where you're coming from and where you're at. You got to zoom out and understand who you are right now in the big picture. But with that understanding comes the nuance of starting to switch and focus more on who you're becoming rather than what you're running from.
This is such a good nuance, because it depends on where you are right now. And yeah, I feel so much what I heard you say. It's like when you are in an environment that doesn't suit you at all, like nothing of it. So everything is just like bad energy for you. And you also have no clue where you want to go. Then this is the moment of, yeah, I get rid of this first because this kind of clears your view. And it also means like you delete the energy drainers because all of these are energy drainers. And then suddenly, before you know it, you have more energy. And this means having more energy. You can start to define your goals. You can give yourself time and space to heal from this. And then discover in your own time what you want your life to actually look like. And this was, this means like you can start journaling, for instance, or you can just experiment because you don't have to figure this out all in one day. You also don't have to figure this out in one go. So you can just keep trying. And this is where you can use the energy you have. And yeah, and then at some point you realize it doesn't make sense anymore to look into the past. And it doesn't make sense anymore to look at experiences or circumstances that make you feel sad because they make you feel sad. And this means your energy goes down and you sit in a certain state of emotion. And it might be more challenging to motivate yourself when you're sitting in this. It's much easier to motivate yourself when you're having fun and when you want to do something and when you're like, oh, yeah, I've got hope. I know things can change. And this is kind of like, I feel the nuance between when to do what.
And when I heard you bring up the phrase, something along the lines of energy drainers, it reminds me of a concept, well, two concepts. Number one, the distinction between work and play, and going deeper into how you can make work start to transform into play is to understand the fact that there are energy drainers and energy batteries, energy vacuums, vampires, and energy chargers. And when you look at your day, your relationships, your environments, your interactions, your habits, all of these things have either one of those qualities. They're either going to charge or drain you. And in making your performance more effortless, in turning work into play, the nuance within that is to add more of the energy batteries or chargers into your daily life and to delete the energy vacuums or drainers. So it seems very simple like that. And it actually isn't too complicated, but there is the depth behind you becoming more aware of the smallest of details which actually drain or charge you. For example, you hear these quotes, the Stoics, people repost stuff on terms of quotes that aren't necessarily easily understood. And what I'm getting at here is essentially the power of your thoughts, something which the average Joe cannot actually fathom the value in. So, what I'm talking about here with energy batteries and energy drainers is there are details that you may not right now understand how much power in compounding is happening due to those details. And that one detail, which I'm getting at here, is the power of the thoughts that you think, the, the stuff that runs through your mind on a daily and moment basis. But when you start to pay more attention to your thoughts, you realize that even your thoughts are drainers and chargers. And if you are unconscious of what runs through your mind in terms of thinking, then you're going to have your own energy drainer, you yourself, and you won't actually be aware of that fact that you're draining your own energy by worrying, by stressing, by having thoughts which are not aligned with who you want to become. So now we're coming full circle because where did we start? We started at the idea of, are you focusing on who you're becoming, or are you focusing on what you're running away from? And when you're focused on who you're becoming, that's higher frequency thoughts. And when you're focused on the pain, the sadness, the fear of what you're moving away from, then you are draining your own energy. And when you have less energy, you're going to get less done. You're going to have less insight. And that's why it all comes down to how observant are you of the quality of your thoughts? Because that is one of the smallest details that actually turns into something massive. Because the quality of each thought matters. But what matters more than the quality of each thought is the fact that you think 80,000 plus thoughts a day. So you take one thought, you multiply it by 80,000. And if that thought is negative, low frequency, or draining, most people are unconscious of how that one unawareness of your thoughts compounds into something so massive, which is having low energy.
Oh, these are so good points. And I feel like this awareness can take a bit of time to be aware of, because like when you're coming out of an environment where you only knew negativity, when you were surrounded by, I don't know, toxic people, toxic habits, toxic food, so many things, then you have no idea what it feels like to actually feel good. This is can be a reality for a lot of people, and this means like becoming aware of this, like, oh, there's a different way of doing this. I can actually feel good during my day, and the answer is yes. And this starts with like, yeah, I mean, what I heard you say, it's the awareness of how do I feel when I think a certain thought? How do I feel when I perform a certain action? And then investigating this feeling and not just like, oh yeah, I always feel this way, so it's okay. It might not be okay. And and then like also starting to observe others, like how do they behave, and what do you think, how do they feel, or when sometimes like when you interact with people, you feel wonderful afterwards. And this feeling, this is what you like to have when you think. So you can actually create a feeling of, oh, I feel wonderful, just by letting certain thoughts go through your head. And again, this like it takes practice, it takes a lot of awareness, and it's just making one step in front of the other. And when you're coming out of such an environment I described, this means like when you can experience this once, like, oh, now I feel wonderful, I feel really good about myself. This means you can replicate this. And then you can replicate this again and again and again. And before you know it, it's like more than 50%. And this is a direction. And this direction can positively change your life.
So I remember you saying something along the lines of that your standards or your norms or the idea that something could be different. And I think what happens here is when you just pay a bit of attention to that outcome of an interaction, of an action, you pay attention to the outcome of either an interaction or a specific action. And you start to realize, wait, so when I interact with Joe, maybe one time I feel wonderful, but then the next time, if you also feel wonderful, and then the third time you interact with Joe, you feel wonderful again, that's not a coincidence. There's something there that is happening between Joe and I, or you and Joe, that is creating that feeling, which we could label wonderful. And where I'm getting at is we can create standards in routines and structures that consistently create these feelings in our lives. And the tough part is the other end of that is when an individual is so used to low standards, toxic environments, immature people, rudeness, the lack of emotional awareness, then they might get so used to that being the norm that an individual accepts that as their standard. Therefore, their low standard is compounded throughout time, and they start to think that reality can only be one certain way. And that's the trap right there, is to think that just because your reality is currently a certain way, that it can't change, be better, or be any different. And when you're coming from a place of focusing on who you're turning into, the amazing qualities which you are focused on cultivating within, then you're going to align yourself with the environments, the people, and the interactions, the habits that leave you feeling good more often than not. So it can be tough to initially crack that egg and start to ask yourself, or at least open your mind up to the idea that something could be different. But once you start to tap into that curiosity and that openness, that just maybe the quality of your days could be different, I think the story gets written right there. Because without that openness, you will choose unconsciously, you'll choose to stay stuck. But if you're open enough to simply look a bit deeper and to ponder upon the idea that things could change, that your life could be different, then you will end up aligning your lifestyle with the actions which consistently leave you feeling wonderful. And once that happens, you're going down the path.
Yeah, it's quite magical when this happens. And exactly as I heard you say, it's like because then your own behavioral patterns change. And this is the moment you attract different people. And this is the moment you attract different environments. And also you notice more and more like, oh, this environment isn't a fit at all. So let's get out of here and find something what actually is a good fit. But what does a good fit mean? This is kind of like it's pretty neutral. So you have a certain way of a certain energy, and then you find an environment or people that have the same energy. And this means a good fit. So if you have low energy, a low energy environment is a good fit. Weirdly enough. But you realize like, oh, but I can change. I can change the way I feel. I can change the way I behave. All of this so I can raise my energy levels. And then this means you attract high energy, which means it's positive, it's healing, it's just wonderful to interact with people. It's nice to be in a place. It's enjoyable to do a task. All of this happens. And then it's like, where did all the negativity go? Because suddenly it's all gone. And this is true magic.
And again, I think when we're asking that question of what is a good fit, we can also ask the question, what isn't a good fit? Because you might not know where that good fit is. You may not have any idea what you want to do next. But if you're at the phase where you just know that what you're doing now should change, ask yourself that question. What isn't a good fit? Get so clear on what you don't want. And if you're in a different phase where you know what you don't want already and you kind of know where to go, now it's just about figuring out how can you stack and create a routine filled with the actions which consistently leave you feeling wonderful. For me, I'll give you a few: walk, stretch, meditate, workout, and write. If I do those things consistently with correct nutrition, it's almost impossible to have bad days. And of course, you still can fuck it up. If you don't notice when you're in a state of mind which you wouldn't like to operate from, and you stay in that state, but the good thing is, all you got to do to get out of that state is cycle through one of the actions I just listed, and you'll get into a new state and you'll realize the difference. So, if I could leave you with anything actionable here, I would say test that out and pay attention to that moment when you start to switch between a state of mind which you don't like being in. And once you get into an action, which I've listed, pay attention to that moment within your mind and your body and your being when you notice and feel the shift. Because the better you get at feeling that shift, crazy things will happen. So I don't want to tell you what's going to happen. I can't tell you. But if this was valuable, if you enjoyed it, Myra's Twitter will be in description. Just shoot her a DM if you want to interact with her, if you have any specific feedback for her. Of course, feel free if you're on YouTube to reply in the comments. Let us both know. I'll reply and I'll show Myra what you said. Um, and if you're interested in taking this stuff deeper for you in your personal circumstance and situation, if you want to radiate confidence, decrease stress, to increase your energy levels, anything like that, overcome anxiety, heal a certain emotional blockage within, anything like that, get into the best shape of your life, just shoot me an email. You could write anything in that email. Just give me a little bit of context on your specific situation. Appreciate you deeply. Drop a like, share it with a friend. If you have anyone who may benefit from this, let them know what you took from this episode, what was valuable here. also feel free to let us know down below. Thank you. Have a great day.